Tucson has one of the largest non-motorized parades in the world. And it comes right down the street right here. It has for 40 years, over 40 years, maybe 50, 60 years. I forgot when it started. And it's about a 2 or 3 mile parade. On a tape, well, let me go back. When Brother Greene came here in August of '65 to kind of scope things out and to be with Brother Branham here in Tucson, and Brother Greene, knowing that Brother Branham desired to have a church here, he kind of scoped things out a little bit. And when they had that parade in, no, he came in '64. He came in '64. And in February of '65, when they had the parade, Brother Branham came here and stood right where you are right now. And he was with his son Joseph. This was just a 2-lane road at that time. And Brother Branham talked about the parade coming by and the bands coming by. And he said they got to see the old veterans, you know, and, you know, the battle scarred. And he talked about, you know, how they had given their life for the country and everything. And then he said when they got to where he was, the band changed from what they were playing to Onward Christian Soldiers, marching as to war. Well, we knew Brother Branham had been here, and he had seen something here, and it didn't really dawn on Brother Greene what it was that he saw until '65, later that year, when he met Brother Branham. Brother Greene was looking for a building in August of '65. And he looked everywhere. He called realtors and everything, looking for an empty building to have service. And he met Brother Branham one day, and Brother Branham said, Brother Perry, he said, you're going to have to learn right now, this is not your battle. It's the Lord's battle. He said, you just commit it to the Lord, and God will show you where He wants you to be. He said, oh, yeah, well, you're right, Brother Branham, you're right. And so the next day, a realtor called Brother Greene and said, Brother Greene, we have a small building. They're getting ready to vacate. Would you like to come see it? Because it's going to be up for rent. And Brother Greene said, sure. So Brother Greene went, and he went right here to this building. And in this building was the first Jewish synagogue that was built in the state of Arizona. Brother Greene went inside, and he kind of looked around, and he saw how that they could put in some Sunday school rooms in the back and how they could enlarge the sanctuary a little bit, take some of the pews, rearrange them, put in some more chairs and everything. And he said, I'll take it. He went back and he called Brother Branham. He said, Brother Branham, I found the building. I'm all excited. He said, oh, that's nice, Brother Branham. Yeah, it's down there on South Stone. Oh, really? Wow, that's nice, you know. And, I tell you what, it's just awesome. You know, Brother Branham could have told Brother Greene, hey, Brother Greene, there's a building.
Yeah, that's true.
But he didn't do it that way. He let God work out the circumstances.
Yeah.
It's like Leo and Jean with the cult that they started up in Prescott. Brother Branham knew what was going on. He could have went in there and destroyed the whole thing. He could have told them, you know, they were hypocrites. He knew everything, but he let God handle the situation. And sometimes that's what we have to do. And we have to let God come on the scene and do the work and not us. There's a difference in when we do something and when God does something. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to cross the street. I'm going to talk more about some of the things that took place over here. But this is the last place Brother Branham had communion. You can go on tape and you can find Brother Branham's first visit to Tucson Tabernacle, and the last service that he had here was communion, just before he left on his trip going back to Jeffersonville when he had his accident. So let's go ahead and cross the road. Federal registry. We have an actual federal registry of historic buildings all over the United States. This is the only building that's actually in 3 different languages. It's in Spanish, English, and in Hebrew. And the Jewish pioneers among Arizona's earliest settlers began arriving in the 1850s, and for half a century they worshipped in private homes and rented quarters. In 1904, the Hebrew Ladies Society, now the Sisterhood of Temple Emmanuel, which is up there on Tucson Boulevard, was established formally to provide for social services and religious needs. One of its goals was realized when Temple Emmanuel, the territory's first synagogue, building was erected at a cost of $4,712. That's how much this building cost. It opened on the eve of the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, October the 3rd, 1910. The congregation worshipped here until 1949. So now when you walk in the door, some of the old pews, the same floor, the same rostrum, the platform that Brother Branham preached from, it's still there. What they did is, all they did was they fixed it, they fixed the floor, they fixed the old wooden floor, and they made it into a museum. And so now it went back to the Jewish people. And it was Congressman Giffords that presided over the opening of their 100-year time capsule that they had put in this building. And it was a year later that she was shot. Okay? Now, let's see if this is open.
I think it is. It looks like it's not.
Yeah, it's open.
If it wasn't, we just jumped the fence.
So these are some of the people that have donated money for the restoration of this. They hired somebody to put these windows in. And this symbol here is also in old Jewish synagogues in Argentina. And there's a complete story about that symbol that's always been here, and the shape of this building and everything. They went back and they tried to find the old architect drawings of this building and who drew it and why did they make it this way. These stones right here are stones that are out of A Mountain. And you notice that they're black stones, and that's why they call A Mountain the Tucson, which is the foot of the Black Mountain. That's what it means in the Pima language, the Indian language. The time capsule came out of this corner right here. We actually saw the masons come in here and take this off and extract the time capsule, opened it up, and they read papers from 1910. It was pretty incredible. This place was packed.
Wow.
Now, when Brother Branham came here and preached here, this place was packed. When they came out of the service, this whole courtyard was just full of people. Now, they didn't have brick back in those days, and they didn't have this ramp. They didn't have this fence out in the front. It was kind of an open area, and you can see those pictures at the Tucson Tabernacle. But I got one story, because we don't have much time. I'm going to relate one story to you. There was a sister that came out of this door, and she stood right here. Brother Branham was standing right there where you are, Sister Angela. And Brother Branham had his hat on. He was turned around, facing, looking that way, and there was a group of men around Brother Branham. And Brother Branham was just talking to him. And this sister stood here. She'd heard about Brother Branham's message. And her name was Margaret Johnson, the wife of Brother Nathaniel Johnson. And it was Brother Nathaniel Johnson who was on a missionary trip going down the river in Alaska that he lost his son. And anyway, she's standing here. And this is in one of the meetings in 1965, November 65. And she's thinking in her heart, if I could just get to Brother Branham, if I could just talk to him for just a minute, and you know, and just ask him some questions. And she started thinking of all these different questions that she'd like to ask him, you know. And people were all over here, people were all over there, and she can't hardly move, so she's just waiting so that she can get down the steps. And about that time, Brother Branham stopped, took his hat off, turned around, looked right this way, and said, "Now, sister, you don't have to worry. Everything's going to be all right." Put his hat back on his head, just kept on talking. And, You know, it was pretty incredible for me. You know, I remember hearing that story when I was just a new convert. And when you hear these stories over and over and over, and then you get to meet Brother Billy Paul, and I got to meet Joseph, and I got to just, it was especially with Brother Greene, I was overwhelmed. And since I've traveled to 34 countries, I've been able to take these stories and share these with other people because it was real. These things happened. And a prophet truly had visited our generation. I don't. Yeah, it's not open. But I wish I could take you inside and show it to you.
Because it says here.
Well, it's not set in the front. Usually it's set out there on the other side of the gate. No. I know the curator, Eileen. Okay, y'all come closer. I got one more story real quick and we got to go. 10:30. So one time I was in here with a group of people from the Congo. And Eileen is the curator. She's Jewish. She just lost her husband a couple months ago. So I'm standing here. I said, Eileen, have you ever heard Brother Branham talk about the fifth seal? The 7 seals. And I said, but especially the 5th seal. She said, no, I haven't. I said, well, sometimes I'm going to come back during the day and I'm going to have a talk with you when you're not busy. And I will relate to you the story of the 5th seal, what Brother Branham said. Because every time I come in here, she always welcomes me and, you know, the little groups that I bring in and everything. And she said the prophet stood right up here. And, I mean, she just, you know, she's right with us, you know. She knows Brother Greene, and Brother Greene has spoken here many times. We've been supporters of what they're doing here. And us Gentiles, you know, we had special invites to come here for the opening of the time capsule. But anyway, so she looked at me. She said, oh, no, you're not. You're going to tell me right now. So I said, oh, okay, I'll tell you right now. So I related to her, there's a scripture in the book of Revelation. It talks about those with white robes. They were souls under the altar crying, oh, Lord, how long? And people thought, you know, there's a lot of different teachings about who that could be, what kind of a group that could be. And I said, when the angel came to Brother Branham had his idea about what that group was. And he said, when the angel come, he said, the angel corrected me on this and told me that that was the Jews that was under the persecution under Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini. And there were 6 million Jews killed. And I'm relating the story, and I'm talking to her about that. And the presence of God came in that place. And it was like, I mean, it was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. It was just absolutely amazing. She was crying. I was crying. Everybody in there was crying. And I said, Eileen, God has not forsaken the Jewish people. And there is a promise from God according to His Word that He's going to send the 2 witnesses. And those 2 witnesses are going to preach the same gospel that I believe right now. And man, I tell you what, she just like, wow, she said, I've never heard anything like this before. I said, well, that's just how I see it. That's what I believe with all my heart. And I said, there's one thing for sure. We love you, and I know you love us, and God will bless you. And she has given me more stories. They have a Torah in there that was given and donated to them. And the story, I think, is on our website. But the story is an absolute miracle from God, how that they were able to get this Torah from Germany. This Torah was hidden by a family when the Nazis came in, and they buried this underground. And 30 years later, 40 years later, the daughter, the only survivor of this family, went back to this house. They were Roman Catholics. Could we look in your backyard? They went in the backyard. There was a doghouse sitting there. They moved the doghouse, had permission to dig, and they found that Torah buried in the ground. And it was still there. And with the permission, and because Eileen, the curator here, had worked with the German government in being able to identify many pieces that was stolen by the Nazis, they gave her permission to bring that Torah back to the United States. And the same Torah that they put in their temple here on Tucson Boulevard, because they went from here over to that Jewish synagogue, they had an old Torah there as well. they had a man come from Chicago who was a Jewish scribe. He flew in, he looked at this Torah, examined it, knew who the writer was of it, could tell you his name, his birthplace, everything about him, because everything is handwritten. And you have to write the whole thing perfect. If it's not perfect, they destroy it and start all over. And then he said, well, while you're here, could you go out and examine the other one? And then he went over there and examined the other one. And he wasn't there 15 minutes. And he said, Eileen, I want you to go back to get the other one, and I want you to bring it here. I want you to lay it beside this one. When they brought this Torah, and they laid it beside the Torah that they were reading from at their new Jewish synagogue, they matched. They were written by the very same author and the very same scribe. It was absolutely incredible. And to give you more detail, it would take another hour. But how God puts everything together was absolutely